it's Dom here from Soundsphere magazine and Gimme A Hull Yeah. Back in the wrestling kitchen. Just had a great chat with AEW's theme producer, Mikey Rukus, about his attitude to success, some of his goals for the future, and some career highlights. Really great chat, and I found it really motivating. I want to thank AEW for allowing us to do it, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. We will see you again really soon. One of the things I wanted to ask you, mate, because you've obviously had a great career, you've done different types of soundtracking, you've done different types of themes over your career. One thing we get asked by a lot of young people we work with is about success and what it means to different people. So, what does success mean to you, Mikey Rukus?
It's a very multifaceted thought process behind it, because of course everybody's got specific goals that they have for their own personal desires. So for me, success isn't just about having your dream job. That's one part of it. It's being able to, there's a little bit of a financial aspect to it. You know, a lot of people do classify that and prioritize that. And especially when you have a family, that has to be a huge deal in terms of success. But not only that, for me, it's about leaving my mark. You know, I have 8 children. My oldest is 25, my youngest is 18, and I want them and my grandchildren and their children to have something to look at after I'm gone. So building a legacy and it's almost like recording history and recording what your thoughts were and what you were going throughout the time of your life. So for me, it's not just music. I'm working on a multitude of things. And people tell me all the time, slow down, enjoy life. And it's like, for me, I am enjoying life because I am building something that's going to last long after I'm gone. So for me, that's success. It's not just the dream job and the financial aspect. It's the mark that you leave and the legacy you leave behind.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And what a legacy you're leaving. And that moves me on nicely to my next question. For young people that, might want to get into soundtracks, they might be inspired by your work because you've done stuff for the UFC, you've done stuff in wrestling, you're doing all kinds of different stuff. What advice would you give to any young creative who wants to follow in your footsteps? What key tips would you give them about if they want to get into making soundtracks and maybe repeating the level of success that you've had?
Sure. And let me say that it's incredibly humbling to know that I've inspired anybody because for me, I'm just me, and I'm out there just trying to do what I can to create my own footprint. And there's no real easy pathway to it. There's no, here's 5 steps to success. You just have to get out there and do it. Mm-hmm. And for me, I knew very early on that I wasn't going to hit the big time just right off the bat. Like, I guess you can say that society and the world has kind of grown up on, and the most recent generation has grown up on American Idol and America's Got Talent and those things with the dream of hitting it big out of nowhere. Reality lets you know that, hey, this is where you want to be, but you have to take the steps to get there. Mm-hmm. So right out of the gate, if you want to get into that zone, the only thing that you can do is go after it. And don't try to shoot for the stars right off the bat. If you don't have that experience, it's just about gaining the experience. It's about, going to, and I started really small. Even before I was doing like music and mixed martial arts, I was hitting local businesses to see if I can make music for commercials, for advertisements on social media. So mm-hmm. It's little things like that. It's taking the steps, not trying to make a ton of money right out of the gate, just trying to get your feet wet, experimenting, learning from all of the mistakes you make, because you're going to make a million of them. I've made a million of them. I still make them every day. But the point is, you learn from those mistakes. You become a little bit wiser. You learn your workflow. You learn your process. You also learn your approach. You learn what to say when trying to court somebody. You learn what not to say. You learn how to not talk yourself out of a deal. So all of these things just kind of come into focus. It's not always just about the music itself, because you can be a fantastic musician, but if you have a horrible attitude, you can't build the relationships necessary to grow yourself. So mm-hmm. all of those things kind of come into play. And the only way you get there is just by doing it. Start small and try to work with everybody and anybody and make sure that it's good for you, good for your career, good for your soul, or good for your bank account. If it's one of those things, then it's okay to do and it's okay to try.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. I think it's a really nice message that you're saying that, it's okay to make mistakes too, so long as you're learning from them, because people avoid that. People don't always talk about the mistakes, and I think it's important for people to know, especially young people, that it's all right to make mistakes and it's not the end of the world.
Absolutely. And there is no flawless song. There's no flawless approach. There's always going to be variables that change. You could be sick one day and have an inner ear infection and don't hear what you're hearing properly, but you have to get it done. And then you go back and listen 3 days later and it's not what you wanted, but hey, it's there. Mm-hmm. So it's all, even little variables like that. So it's never going to be a perfect scenario. You just have to move and learn and understand how to pivot and adjust on a moment's notice.
Absolutely. Flexibility. And that's something you've exhibited in your career. So tell me about the difference, say, in, writing a commercial tune, writing a tune for the UFC and creating a theme for an AEW superstar. What's the creative process like and how is it different?
So there's some similarities and there's a lot of differences. So of course, you want to make sure that you're telling the story that the client wants to tell. Mm-hmm. A lot of it will come down to the content of that story and the time that you have. If you're doing a commercial, you want something that's going to be catchy and it's going to be something that sticks in the audience's mind. And it's the same thing with wrestling themes. It has to be quick. The average wrestling theme on television, you get maybe 45 seconds to a minute and 10 on live TV. On pay-per-views, it's a little bit longer because they have a little bit more time to work, but you have to make sure you're getting your point across in that time frame. So you have to think of those processes of, this could be a full song, but do I start with the chorus here? Do I start with a verse here? Where am I heading in with the melody? Mm-hmm. How long before it starts? So a lot of it comes down to the tempo and the time frame. That's your framework. And then you kind of get into the intricacies of what instruments you're going to use. You have to take into consideration, it's not just the music itself, it's the instruments that you're using against the backdrop of the commentary, against the backdrop of the crowd noise, against the backdrop of the announcer. So all of those things kind of come into play, and it sounds like a lot, but the more you do it, the more you're used to it, and you automatically have a framework in mind, and you can kind of move at a rapid pace.
Absolutely. Can you tell me, because I listened to a previous interview you did where you talked about some of the enjoyable experiences you've had in AEW working with some of the superstars. Sometimes it'll be on the fly, you'll be talking about a theme or some ideas with superstars. And I wanted to ask you about some career highlights so far in your time with AEW. Is there a particularly or a set of good memories that you have working on set themes with particular people? Can you give me a couple of your AEW career highlights so far?
So it's funny because, and I don't want to sound like politically correct, every single theme that I've done is special to me for a specific reason. There's a different story behind it. And one day I'll sit and I'll break it down into a series of the whole scenario around a particular theme song, what we were going for, the interactions and stuff like that. It's very interesting because every single one is different. It's funny that today, October 2nd, is its actual 1-year anniversary that Dynamite aired.
Amazing.
So for me, the overall highlight, and I can remember it, is just being in that arena when Justin Roberts was counting down, and we finished the Dynamite theme song. Me and my band No One Hero had finished it about a week or so before, and they had just released the video of the intro the day before that. So just being in that moment and 11,000 people on their feet and Justin Roberts counting down, and then my son texted me like right at that moment before we went live about how proud he was of me and everything like that. Like it all came into that moment, and it was all I could do not to burst into tears. But literally that moment when the pyro hit, and I was standing directly to the left of the stage on the floor, and I could look up and see the big Tron and the video playing, and it was just, that was the most surreal moment of my entire career, and I will never forget it. Everything else kind of falls in line behind that. So
absolutely, what a beautiful moment, and thank you for sharing that with me, Mikey. That's wonderful. Couple more questions then. I wanted to ask you, because I saw on Twitter you shared some of your favorite video game soundtracks and stuff from your younger years, tracks by bands like Incubus and POD. who I grew up with as well. And I wanted to ask you if you could soundtrack your life, if you had a theme song for your life. Uh, Obviously, it's a bit of a deep question, but what would be the theme or a couple of songs that would soundtrack your life if you had the choice?
Oh man, that is such a. I would have to compile like an album or something in
Yeah.
terms of songs that shaped me and songs that spoke about moments of my life. I listen to everything because I play everything and I work at producing everything. So I'm always constantly listening. Even up to this point, there are times where I have to shut off, and for a while I just didn't listen to anything at all because I'm doing music all day long, and then I shut off and I don't want to hear anything. But in order for me to continue the learning process, I have to put aside time just to listen. So there are songs that throughout my time, whether it was, Metallica's Blackened or, Sepultura's Roots, or even Dream Theater's Voices off of their Awake album, like that, to me, those are staples in my time, not just in my life, but in my learning process of how to produce music. And there's even a couple of Linkin Park songs in there on how they fused the rock and the hip hop, because they did it in a completely different way that a lot of the other bands weren't doing. And who else? There's so many. Faith No More, the vocal stylings of Mike Patton, his chord changes and his key changes. Alice in Chains was another one. The Alice in Chains Dirt album, we just had the 28th anniversary of that album coming out. Like those songs themselves, I would have to kind of compile and just put on an album and say, this was a snapshot of me at that time. And, I didn't just listen to music to listen to it. I took it in, and, it takes you to different places when you really dive in and you can relate and you can connect with what that artist is saying.
Absolutely. And I'm going to throw you another sort of curveball soundtrack question here, which is one we actually like to ask some of the bands that we speak to. If you could rip out the soundtrack of any existing film, it's kind of sacrilege, I guess, asking a producer to do this. If you could rip out the soundtrack of any existing film and replace it with some of your work, what film would you like to soundtrack?
Oh man, it's funny because when you think of, the first thing you think of is your favorite soundtracks, your favorite film soundtracks. But if you rip out your favorite film soundtracks, then it won't be your favorite film soundtracks.
Fair enough. Yeah, good point.
I grew up a huge Transformers fan. If there was ever a series that I wanted to score, it was Transformers. And I'll share a little funny story.
Please.
In 2006, I was the kind of guy that I would just pick up the phone and call somebody. I didn't care. So I called Hasbro and said, I know how to promote your movie a year and a half before you even start promoting your movie. And I had pitched them on doing these Transformer remixes with like the top 10 pop and hip hop songs that were out there. And it had gotten some legs, and I got to go to Hasbro and visit and things like that. And in the same sense, I started researching who was producing the Transformers film. So then I learned about Don Murphy. I learned about Lorenzo de Bonaventura. I picked up the phone and called Don Murphy at Angry Films in Hollywood. He answered the phone, and I was like, I'm the guy to score your film. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm the guy to score Transformers. And he's like, that's not how it works. Like, who's your agent? Who do you work? I was like, I don't have an agent. I'm just this. He was like, look, man, he's like, I love your passion. He said, but that's not how it works. And the funny thing is, I actually became acquaintances with him. I got to go out there and visit. I got to go to Jim Henson Studios. So like even back then, before I even knew what in the world I was doing, I was picking the phone up. And it's one of those things where you kind of learn like, yeah, that's really not how the process works. Yeah. But at the same time, if there was ever a film franchise, and no disrespect to Steve Jablonsky, I thought he did a fantastic job, but if I had my opportunity, it would have 1,000% been the Transformers series.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. What a series it was. But you've been doing some fantastic work on AEW themes. A lot of people love those themes. Obviously, you're getting a lot of streams on Spotify, across social media. So what message have you got for the fans that there's been a lot of love for Scorpio Sky's theme, for loads of different wrestlers' themes that you've done. What message have you got for the fans that are listening to your themes during the week when AEW is not on, as well as obviously tuning into the program every week to hear your music?
I would, number one, say thank you so much for listening. It is an honor And it is my complete honor to be able to create this music for not just the wrestlers, but for the fans as well. And I am committed to creating new and innovative ways for the fans to consume this product and this music and these themes. You know, I'm always committed to learning. I'm always committed to getting better. Like, I know where my areas of weakness are, and I work on those every single day, because at the end of the day, I want to leave a mark. I want to leave my footprint and my handprint on this industry and on the world. So always know that I'm always working to be better. Always know that I'm always working in the best interest of not only the company and the talent themselves, but the fans as well. I want everybody to have fun. I want everybody to experience those stories and really take them in and see where we go from here. Because I mean, we're only 16 months in. You know, I joined May 2019. You know what I mean? Where are we going to be 10 years from now? Like, what is the music going to sound like 10 years from now? What is it going to sound like 30 years from now when I'm, you know, if I'm long gone and there's this legacy and there's, you know, 10,000 tracks that I've done, that's what I want to leave behind. and know that I've made a mark.
Absolutely, mate, and absolutely you have. And just to finish off, then I know there's a whole load of plans that you can't tell me about, but I've been enjoying the 8-bit stuff you've been doing on the AEW SoundCloud. I think that's fantastic. Can you tell me some of the other things you are working on? What can you tell me about what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, so the 8-bit thing kind of came out of nowhere. We were just kind of chit-chatting back and forth, but I love doing remixes. I love doing covers and mashups and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and we're working on an 8-bit album. We're going to put a whole collection of AEW themes together and put them out there. We're looking at a remix album somewhere down the future. You know, we just finished up Will Hobbs' new theme last week. I think that's going to be coming up next week. He's facing Brian Cage.
Nice.
It may even show up a little bit sooner than that. We're working on a new Chaos Project theme. So when Luther and Serpentico face Jericho and Hager next week, they're going to be coming out to a new theme.
Wow, awesome.
Luther is static. Serpentico is ecstatic. You know, they're great people behind the scenes, and I love working with every single one of them. So yeah, those, I can't talk about anything else other than that, but I can tell you, like, what I just listed as opposed to what I'm actually working on a daily basis, it's probably 3 times what I've even talked about here. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff going on. The next 12 months are going to be extremely interesting.
That's fantastic. Well, honestly, mate, it's great to hear you so enthusiastic about the future of AEW, and it's been an absolute pleasure being, sitting with you in your studio today. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well.
Of course, man. Of course. We'll see you down the road for sure.
Take care.